Welcome to the Compliance Perspectives podcast. I'm Adam Turteltaub from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics and Healthcare Compliance Association. Joining us today from Cleveland is Veronica Xu. Veronica is Chief Compliance Officer for Saber Healthcare Group and a member of the SCCE and HCCA board. And today we're going to be talking about raids, one of those things that comes up periodically for people, but is very scary. Veronica, thanks for talking about it with us. Let's talk about handling a raid from an enforcement authority first. Long before one happens, I would imagine organizations need to be prepared for that eventuality. Who should be on the team handling the preparation?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Adam. It's my honor to be here. You're absolutely right. It can be very scary. And of course, handling a raid can be very stressful. So the best approach is to have a plan in place. It's just like fire drills we often do in our workplace. We want to have a plan before a disaster strikes so you know what to do in the event there's a fire in your building, right? So when planning, it is crucial to include key personnel in the process, regardless of which agency is conducting the raid, whether it is the FBI, ICE, or other authorities. It is actually very essential that you have a cross-functional team with clear roles and rapid coordination. Depending on your organization's line of business and corporate structure, typically a response team should have the general counsel, your CEO, your chief operating officer, your chief compliance officer, and chief information technology officer. I would emphasize that there is no one-size-fits-all. Every organization structure and business models are so different. Therefore, there may be other executive leaders you want to consider. For example, if you're a financial institution, you may want to include your CFO. Similarly, if you're a healthcare provider, your chief medical officer may need to be included. The bottom line is the selection of the response team members should be very intentional. Everyone serving on the response team should have a purpose and specific tasks. I would highly recommend that you make the roles and the responsibilities very clear to the members of the response team so that they know what they're expected to do when that occurs. Without delineation of duties, things can get messy and confusing very quickly.
Well, and given that it's already a messy and confusing situation for people, you don't want to make things worse. So who should be trained in how to respond when the feds come in the door?
That's a great question, Adam. Receiving a visit by federal agents is not the most pleasant surprise that everyone would like to have. Naturally, people may be nervous or scared. Without training, people wouldn't know or even remember what to do when they're in fear or when they're stressed out. So training is really critical in helping employees handle a raid in that kind of stressful situation. Because we cannot predict who in the organization will encounter federal agents, the best practice is to train everyone in the company. That way, whoever greets or encounters federal agents will know how to respond properly, such as your front desk staff. So oftentimes, an office building or facility has a receptionist or security guard. They're usually the first point of contact. Upon the federal agent's arrival, either the receptionist or the security guard should know they need to contact appropriate personnel, such as your general counsel, the building manager, or other executives, who will then handle the matter from there. Therefore, the building manager or other executive leaders should certainly receive training, as you can see. In addition, the core response team, including the ones we mentioned earlier in this conversation, like the general counsel, the compliance officer, the CEO, and the COO, should also be trained. And those are just some examples. As you can see, all members of the workforce, including your frontline staff, your mid-level managers, your department heads, should be trained on how to properly respond to a raid so everyone remains calm and knows what to do in such a stressful situation.
Or at least as calm as one can in those situations. So what should they be trained to do?
Yeah. So when preparing employees for a potential raid, training should focus on proper behavior and response to such a situation. While all members of the workforce should receive training, the content and the depth of the training may vary by role. There are common themes and best practices that apply to everyone in a company. And there are also specific instructions and guidelines for different groups of employees. So let's first discuss the general guidelines that all employees should be aware of. It's important for employees, especially the ones that are interacting with federal agents, to stay calm, be polite, and respectful. I think professionalism and courtesy really go a long way. There are do's and don'ts that you can outline and share with your workforce. For example, employees should be reminded that it is okay for them to tell federal agents that they're not authorized to make a statement or make a decision on behalf of the organization. Employees should not try to stop or prevent agents from doing their job. The other piece to this is that training content should be tailored based on employees' roles. For example, again, we're talking about frontline staff now. They should be trained on how to greet agents. There are specific steps that they should take. They should ask for agents' business cards or at least the contact information of the lead agent and notify the general counsel or the designated response team leader. Then the mid-level managers or department heads, they're more likely to interact with the federal agents directly on the spot. So they need to know that it's vitally important to follow instructions from the general counsel or the response team, including writing down the records, the files, devices, or documents taken by the agents. Also, if electronic devices or digital records are involved, your IT personnel should be involved, so they certainly need to be trained on how to cooperate and work with federal agents. Of course, legal, compliance, and executive leaders should also be trained on a variety of issues stemming from a raid, such as how to interact with federal agents, how to document the raid, and how to respond to questions from the agents and their employees and the public. So to sum it up, basically, keep your instructions simple to follow and easy to understand. Let employees know whom to contact, and everybody should stay calm and be respectful.
Well, let me ask another question. We've talked about the people who are sort of actively involved when the raid happens, but there's going to be dozens, hundreds, even thousands of other employees on site who aren't directly involved. What's the best way to communicate with the rest of the workforce? What should you tell them? Is it simply get out of the way and go home for the day, or something else?
Yeah, excellent question, Adam. So during a raid, which can be absolutely stressful to everyone at the scene, it is vital to have clear communication with your workforce. I think the question that you presented consists of two parts. One is about the best way to communicate with employees, and the other part is about messaging. So let's talk about the communication methods first. Companies can use their traditional communication channels, such as through email, intranet, etc. What's more important is that companies need to keep lines of communication open and have consistency in their messaging. Be forthcoming with their employees. Don't lie about the raid. Let employees know that federal agents are in the building. It's okay to tell them that, and it's okay to let employees know what they need to do in this situation. When the company is not addressing the issue, or when the company is trying to avoid talking about it, it causes people to speculate, which is definitely not helpful to the organization or the situation. So it's important to keep messages concise, have one voice, do not have multiple spokespersons because you can have conflicting messages, and certainly do not send mixed messages, and avoid legalese that will likely cause people to get confused or cause panic. And we don't want organizations to give legal advice to employees because that's just not the organization's role. And any instructions could be construed as directives to employees not to cooperate with federal agents, and you definitely want to avoid that. You also mentioned if companies should just let employees go home. Well, that depends on the industry the company is in. Some companies may choose to send non-essential workers home, but not all businesses have the luxury of doing so. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. It's just each company's situation is different. For example, some healthcare providers, you can't just send all of your staff members home, then who is there to care for patients, right? So some companies may need to tell their employees to stay put, and each organization should really look at their specific situation. And that's why it's especially important for companies to conduct training and even do some tabletop exercises beforehand. And after the raid, you may also want to send out communications to employees with an update, because clear communication can demonstrate the company's commitment to transparency and help foster trust. And those are the suggestions that I would share with companies and organizations.
Well, you touched on what my last question was going to be, which is after the raid is concluded, what is the role of the compliance team? You already mentioned some clear communications about what happened. Anything else, or at this point, is it best to leave things in legal's hands?
Right. Depending on the nature of the investigation, it is possible that the matter is in legal's hands and the legal counsel is handling the defense and working with outside counsel. However, the compliance team still plays a very critical role in leading your internal review or other projects. The industry the company is in probably will dictate what actions and steps the organization must take. For example, in a long-term care setting, if an abuse allegation is brought up, the provider must conduct an internal investigation and self-report it to the state's Department of Health. So the company's compliance team's work does not end when the federal agents leave the building. Rather, it should start reviewing the matter and identify any gaps in the process. It may be necessary to revise or update compliance policies and protocols if needed. Also, compliance should not work in silos. Collaboration is really the key. Check with legal to see if there's any document request or item that compliance can assist with. Work with operations on identifying any deficient or concerning practices and document any corrective actions and remedial steps. By implementing proactive measures, compliance is not only helping the organization improve, but may also protect it from potential stiff financial penalties. Because in the event the federal agency is pursuing any legal actions, your internal controls and proactive measures can show your good faith efforts, and it can help the organization earn some credit from the regulators. So those are the steps that I would recommend.
Well, Veronica, thank you for that calming information on how to handle a very stressful situation. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. I'm Adam Turteltaub from SCCE and HCCA. I hope we're able to expand your compliance perspective.